So interestingly, until 11 hours ago, I hadn't seen a single one of the Equalizer movies with Denzel Washington, but I wanted to see the third one. And so I watched the first one in the afternoon. I saw the second one, and I finished that 20 minutes before the show for the third one. Then I ran across to the theater to watch this one, and now I'm going to talk to you about the third one. So today has been a bit of an Equalizer day under this roof, which is, I guess, appropriate for what we're about to talk about. So let's begin with the review. The Equalizer 3 was once again directed by Antoine Fuqua. He directed the first two films as well, and once again it stars Denzel Washington. In this one we find Robert McCall in Sicily because he's gone there for a specific reason, which I'm not going to get into. But once he's landed up over there, he realizes that he kind of wants to leave behind the life of equalizing that he's been doing, so to say. However, when it turns out that the mafia over there is planning some stuff which involves harming the locals over there, and essentially in very gruesome ways, he once again decides to do something in order to help these people. And that's about the gist of the movie. The Equalizer movies, like from watching them today in the afternoon, the movies have very simple plots. At the end of the day, their sales pitch is one thing. You want to see Denzel Washington kill a bunch of people in very grotesque ways, in pretty awesome ways maybe, something that might get a cheer out of you, and you watch bad guys suffer, and he just takes absolutely no hits while doing so because he's just that good at his job. And if that's what you want out of the Equalizer 3, then you're gonna love this movie. Because that's exactly what you get with the third film as well. This is a movie that has a very simple setup, the one that I just told you, and eventually things go south, the action commences, and then you get some killing. And that's actually fine. I think one of the good things about this entire trilogy has been the fact that it doesn't try to overstay its welcome or overstep its boundaries. I think the closest that it got was probably the finale of the second movie, because they're all fighting in the middle of like a very destructive hurricane, which is like, okay, fine, I guess that's the closest to a superhero movie that you're going to get over here. But that's really about it. Otherwise, what you're getting is a retired CIA agent, someone who's presumed dead, working on the sidelines, away from the law's eyes, and just going to town. And Denzel Washington has so much fun with this role that I wouldn't be surprised if a few years from now he's like, hey, we'll do a fourth one. Why not? Because I actually think he'd be down for that, because he has so much fun in this movie as well. He's just really relishes playing the character. And Fuqua's direction is really good. I've always thought of him as somewhat of an underrated director, because I've seen a lot of his movies now, and critically they may not get always the best love, but I've always really enjoyed those movies. I thought his best one up until now was probably the Magnificent Seven remake that he did in 2016. I still think that after watching Equalizer 3 as well, because I think that he really did a really good job with that film. But I also know it had some divided reviews, and obviously you're going to try and compare it to the movies that came before it. But even here, I think he does a very solid job when it comes to, staging certain set pieces, and once again, they're all really well shot and they're really well composed. I think one thing the film improves on, especially when you look at it from the second movie, was the pacing. I thought the second movie didn't do as good a job as the first one did, even if it somewhat, condensed the runtime down. This is the shortest of the three, by the way. It's an hour and 50 minutes and done, which I think is a good thing, because the other two movies, I thought maybe they went a little longer. Like, I thought the first one was about 2 hours and 12 minutes. It could have been a few minutes shorter, but it was paced better. The second one was shorter, but it was not paced as well. The first hour really dragged, and then it really picked up in the second half. This one is sort of the best of both, where it's like the good elements of 1 and 2, they've tried to work with those a little bit more over here. Yes, there are a couple of times in the first act where it does take a while to get going, but then so did the first one. Like, you need to have that setup so you care enough about the characters that are on screen, and so when the trouble starts happening, you're eventually invested in them, and you want them to make it out of these terrifying situations. Once again, the film does that pretty well. Like I said, you're not going in for a complex crime noir story. You're going to see Denzel Washington kill people. And in that, the movie excels. It looks great. Once again, it's really well shot. And yeah, I had a good time with Equalizer 3. Like I said, this is not exactly a movie where I can give you an in-depth review beyond a certain point. I couldn't even give you an in-depth review for the other two Equalizer movies. Having seen all three of them in one day, though, I would say this might be my favorite one. I think the first one's emotional anchor was a little extra, but I think this one, like I said, took the best of the first two movies and, you know, it made something out of that, which I think compiled those to the best effect that it could have. There are some slight plot strands that don't really go anywhere. Some will say it doesn't really have a sense of finality, but I think that's kind of why I made the point about if he ever decides to do another one. Because there is an aspect to it where it's like, you know, you could make another one if you wanted to. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. It depends on whether this movie is a success, honestly, or if Denzel's up to it. But who knows? That could be interesting. But over the last half a day, I've had a good time watching these three movies. It's a good, solid action trilogy. It ends things pretty well for this said trilogy. And I hope you guys check it out this weekend and have a good time with it as well. I'm going to give The Equalizer 3 a 7.5 out of 10. Does what it needs to do, doesn't overstay its welcome, fun movie, ends, that's it. You know, you really sometimes don't need more than that. And it does so fairly solidly. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And I will see you guys at the movies. Sometimes the snaps are good, sometimes they're not. You know, I try.